Hello and welcome to the section on recovery strategies. So here I'm going to give you a quick overview of the different therapies available for the treatment of ongoing fatigue. So if we dive into the first slide, here you'll see sort of 9 buckets. And within each of these buckets, there are many sort of sub-therapies which you can choose from. But this is a broad kind of 30,000 foot view of what's available. This is the kind of the beginning of just understanding what's out there and how you can approach it. So I'll give you an example. Brain retraining, which many people have heard of, neuroplasticity or brain retraining, overlaps in several of these techniques. It employs therapeutic visualization and anchoring. So as you can see, some things fall into various buckets, but let's take these one by one for now. So therapeutic visualization, very, very well studied mind-body therapy. And this is visualizing the outcome you want before it happens. Very much undervalued in the world of health, but it's been proven time and time again to be very effective. And I myself found it enormously effective. Until you can see it, it's very difficult to make anything a reality. And that's like much broader than health, but specifically with chronic disease, being able to see yourself well is just incredibly powerful. So you've got therapeutic visualization, and then breaking the habit of being yourself. This is a nod to Joe Dispenza, the scientist and meditation expert. So he sort of advocates breaking free from the scripts which make up your personality. We think of our personalities as this defined whole, which is immutable or unchangeable. But in fact, that's not the case. You know, we are running on old tapes in a way. We've picked up scripts that were useful to us at one point, and now they perhaps no longer are, and these can contribute to chronic disease. So looking into this and breaking this down is super important. Then there's vagus nerve stimulation. There's various different types of vagus nerve stimulation, and there's also polyvagal theory, which is a really sort of broad understanding of the vagus nerve and how to influence its different states of activation. Very important to understand. There's anchoring, which, as I said, is very used in brain retraining. This is how your sort of physical stance, perhaps, or your things you touch or things you see, your environment, impact your mode of thinking. And I go into some depth on this in the brain retraining course about how different movements and so on can reinforce certain ways of thinking. This is often done for the negative, and you can kind of hijack this for the positive, as is often done in brain retraining. There's somatic work, enormously powerful, hard to believe until you see it work, but it does work. And that is the idea of kind of feelings which you've had a long time ago not being resolved and being locked inside your nervous system, being released through journaling and meditation and visualization and so on and so forth. When you feel it happen, you'll be absolutely amazed, as I was, because I frankly didn't believe it, but I was willing to give anything a go. And yes, absolutely incredible. I think one of the foundational pillars, it should be one of the foundational pillars of any recovery. There's the knowledge cure. I'll talk a bit more about John Sarno in just a moment, so I won't go into that just now. Nervous system work. This is looking at the relative states of your nervous system and how you can control whether you're in a state of fight or flight or rest and digest, which is otherwise known as a healing state. There are different cues to look for and different ways to bring yourself into the different states. It's not like one is bad or one is good, but being stuck in a survival state is obviously not conducive to healing and therefore is not a good thing for you. There's circuit breaker work. So when I refer to the circuit breaker, well, let's start at the beginning. I call my company emptying the bucket. The bucket is your tolerance for stress, and the contents of the bucket are the different stressors in your life. And this could be infections, or it could be literal life stress, or it could be negative childhood experiences. All these things fill up your bucket. And then let's say you get an infection, you get COVID, and it tips you over. And your circuit breaker, which is a separate sort of function in your brain, will then flip and say, right, we're going into survival mode. We're going into a shutdown state because the world is not safe right now. There's too many stressors. This is the same type of thing that happens when you have flu. So I advocate both for kind of emptying the bucket, as in reducing the number of stressors, and in working on your circuit breaker to kind of convince your brain that the world is a safe place to be and it doesn't need to initiate this fatigue response to keep you safe. Then there's diet and lifestyle. A lot of people only focus on this, but there's a lot more to healing than this, obviously. But it's absolutely crucial to eat a natural diet to avoid ultra processed food. There is a lot more to it than that, and I go into that in the nervous system course. So a lot of information there, not very practicable, I understand. So how do you sort of take this and execute it? Where can you go from here? So I've laid out two options here. On the left are the three courses I've created. The TMS course, which refers to the work of a doctor called John Sarno, who I said I'd talk about in just a moment. There's the brain retraining, the most famous fatigue therapy. And then there's the nervous system approach, which is on my most in-depth course and goes into a lot of detail about all the different therapies I tried and learnt about in books and recovery testimonials. And really, the idea of that is you won't run out of things to try. If you've got the dedication to keep trying this and keep coming back, then you'll find things to try. What I did is I would go to forums, read books, and I had to pick these things out from just hundreds of different locations and then experiment with them. And often the things I was choosing to try were just mentioned by one or two people on some Reddit forum or something, and therefore didn't actually have a very good evidential base, but I still would try them, and then they wouldn't work very well. Funnily enough, the things which do work for a lot of people and are the most popular and widely known within the world of nervous system health, for example. So I've tried to save you the time of going through the books and going through the Reddit forums and all the trial and error that involves by putting it all in a nice kind of ordered format that you can go through and really get a deep understanding of the many, many therapies available and the different ways of looking at fatigue. Because just because I say look at it psychologically at one moment doesn't mean I say always look at it psychologically. You can come at it through different modalities, and the nervous system course covers off a lot of those modalities. Just to jump back into the brain retraining course, that goes deep into parts work and anchoring and the realistic limitations of the technique as well, which a lot of popular brain retraining courses don't mention, and I think does an injustice to the people who do it and expect an absolute panacea just through one technique, which is sometimes not the case. Although saying that, the technique is wildly effective for others and can just be a piece of your puzzle, So it's important to go into it with realistic expectations, and I provide a lot of that information in the course. Now, if you don't want to go down that route of doing the courses, that doesn't mean you can't get to the final destination and recover or significantly improve your health. I'll leave a list of books you can read on my website, so you can take it directly from the different doctors. The limitation of this is often they don't spell out exactly what you need to do. You'll get a kind of theoretical understanding. From that, you have to derive your own strategies, and then you have to experiment based on what you've extracted and and your theories from the book. This is what I did a lot of the time, but it does take a long time, and there's a lot of trial and error, which is why I created the 3 courses. But those resources are there. I'll leave them on the website for anyone who'd rather go down that route. So now let's talk about John Sarno, who I said I would mention again. So John Sarno came up with TMS, or tension myositis syndrome, which sort of subsequently came to be called the mind-body syndrome, I think, because it's more simple to say. But his idea, and he started writing in the 1970s, and he was a standard doctor looking through the standard medical paradigm and had done a lot of training to understand people's bodies in that way, and specifically chronic pain and back pain being his speciality. And then he realized that there was a strong connection between the unconscious mind, maybe unresolved conflictive feelings that people hadn't come to terms with, and chronic symptoms, whereby the brain could create symptoms in order to distract people's attention from unwanted feelings. Sounds absolutely incredible, I know, but if you go to Thank You, Dr. Sarno, or you Google that, you'll see thousands upon thousands of testimonials, because it's been so effective for so many people. He started off primarily talking about chronic pain, and most of the people who talk about John Sarno are in this kind of are experiencing chronic pain in some way or another. But it applies equally to fatigue, and he recognized this in his later work. As his work evolved from the 1970s on, he started to realize that, fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue were just different expressions of what he called TMS. So they are, in fact, no different to chronic pain. They're just a different way of the subconscious or unconscious mind manifesting the same thing. The TMS approach has led to many, many recoveries. It helped me get out of chronic pain, massively improve my energy, and without really doing anything other than just investigating my unrecognized emotional landscape in my unconscious. That didn't mean coming to terms with absolutely everything in my life. That's not necessary, fortunately. But the journaling and so forth can really help, which is why I've written a journaling course, which you can complete in under a month. And that could be a great first step to recovery. That it is enough for some people. You may struggle to believe that right now, but with enough dedication and focus on bringing those unconscious beliefs to the surface, you can recover. The reason being because the reason for the symptoms is to distract you, so the unconscious remains unconscious. If it becomes conscious, then that response is no longer needed. Again, I don't expect you, if you've never heard of this, to take me on the strength of my word right now. But if you go to the website I mentioned, thank you, Dr. Sarno, you'll see just thousands of glowing testimonials saying people have recovered from all sorts of things, from arthritis to severe back pain to crazy things. So take a look if you're interested. And then there is the journaling book, which you can get from my website, emptyingthebucket.com. Then there's brain retraining. This is the most famous therapy. I've already sort of alluded to this quite a lot. It revolves around neuroplasticity and the circuit breaker I've mentioned, and flipping that circuit breaker back. So our circuits are all intact once more, and we get our energy back. We could also see that as convincing our brain that the world is safe once more. And this primarily works through therapeutic visualization. And there's a lot of parts work in the way I do brain retraining as well, which I think is really important to understand. Regardless of brain retraining, it's just a really, really useful therapy, and I think should play part in everyone's recovery. Then there's the nervous system recovery program. This is my main course I've already talked about, and it includes absolutely everything, every technique I learned, everything I tried. I spent a long time kind of putting that in a very digestible format with short, kind of easy to understand videos, and helping you build a plan whereby you kind of replace habits which are not helping you with a huge list of therapies which you can try. I don't say you have to try this therapy or you have to try that therapy. I really just say, here are all the therapies you could try. Here's how you can run experiments and see what works. I also go into sort of biohacking, understanding the different states of your nervous system when you're in a state of repair or a healing state, or when you're not. And the more attuned you get to your body, the more you can understand those states. And that is wildly impactful, even though it feels like nothing, like a lot of these techniques. You'll just think, oh, that's just a way of thinking, a kind of framing. But when you try it and you understand it, you'll realize that it's far more than that. And a lot of these techniques are really cutting edge. They come from different worlds, like neuro-linguistic programming, trauma therapy, many different worlds. And different experts have informed all these different views of fatigue. And you don't have to take one view or the other view. You can hold multiple views at the same time, and they all be true, because the brain and the body are one dynamic system. And when you start treating it as such, you'll start noticing the changes, rather than just saying, I only do supplements, I only do diet, I only do meditation. That's not necessary. You can approach this thing from dozens and dozens of different angles, and actually, in many cases, see results very quickly. Sometimes it's just about overcoming a mental barrier, and it's different for different people. So you will see. But I encourage you just to keep coming back, keep doing the work, and see where this takes you. I say to all my clients that this is an extremely low risk thing, even if you're skeptical. And I understand why you would be skeptical just hearing about this for the first time. It's basically a zero risk thing to do. The worst case scenario is that you just improve your mindset. The best case scenario is that you get your life back and recover. So, that's a pretty good deal, right? By any stretch of the imagination. And there's not a lot else on the table when it comes to treating fatigue. So I figure you may as well give this a try. It's just so effective for so many people. If you look at any of the recovery testimonials on YouTube, you'll see nervous system work just reiterated throughout the testimonials again and again and again, and same for brain retraining, etc. John Sarno's work is a little bit less known, but I hope now you've seen this video, you'll even if you don't get that journaling course, you'll go ahead and investigate that and give kind of TMS therapy a try. So I really wish you the best of luck. Thank you for completing the course, and get in touch to let me know how you're going with all of this. Thank you.